What on earth is this? I stared intently at the video streaming on my phone. It was a live feed of my house. Specifically, my bedroom. An app on my phone was connected to the surveillance camera in the room. On the screen, I saw my husband and a woman together. Are they embracing? The two of them were so close, there was no way it could be excused as friendly or accidental. As I continued to watch in silence, I heard their voices. The woman said,
She hasn't found out about that, has she?
No!
My husband replied.
I'm doing exactly what you told me to. It's perfect. She's so dumb, she believes everything.
The woman laughed.
I can totally imagine that.
After sharing a laugh, they began to get intimate and collapsed onto the bed together. I was left speechless, staring at the video in utter disbelief. Because that woman was my own sister. My name is Nancy. I'm 50 years old. I've been married to my husband, Jason, who turns 55 this year, for 20 years. We don't have any children, so it's just been the two of us living together. Since we both worked, we had a comfortable lifestyle, but that all changed about 10 years ago. Jason was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. At first, it was just small mistakes at work, so I never imagined it could be dementia. But as time went on, the mistakes became more significant. He would forget the dates of important meetings with clients or even how to do his job. Eventually, it became impossible for him to continue working. In his daily life, he started forgetting where things were, how to change clothes, and his sense of direction became so impaired that he'd bump into things constantly. There was even a time when he left a kettle on the stove and almost caused a fire. So, we turned to my sister, Amy, who runs a care facility, for advice. She recommended a hospital where Jason underwent tests, and it was there that he was diagnosed with early-onset dementia. Jason retired from work, and now we have a caregiver sent from Amy's facility who comes every other day, while he spends his days in home care. As for me, I've become the sole breadwinner, working hard every day.
Nancy, how is Jason doing?
It was the day Harris, our usual caregiver, came over. Amy showed up with him, as she sometimes does. Amy, you're here?
Yes. He's my brother-in-law, so of course I'm worried.
Ever since we started relying on Amy's facility, she's made it a point to drop by now and then before I leave for work. Since she was a child, Amy had always said,
I wish I had a big brother.
She's admired Jason ever since we got married, and she was more heartbroken than anyone when he was diagnosed with dementia. Despite her busy job, she checks in on us frequently, and I'm really grateful for that. Thanks to Amy and Harris, I can leave Jason at home with peace of mind and go to work. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to make ends meet, so I'm deeply thankful to both of them. That said, they can't come on weekends, so the burden of caregiving falls entirely on me. I work on weekdays, and on weekends, I'm solely responsible for Jason's care, leaving little to no time for myself. I hadn't really noticed it myself, but I must have been more exhausted than I realized. At the hospital for Jason's regular checkup, a familiar nurse immediately picked up on how worn out I was. We've known each other for nearly 10 years, so she can tell when something's off.
Nancy, I know it's tough taking care of your husband, but you need to find some time to rest by yourself.
She said. I know, you're right. But it's easier said than done. I replied. I could probably ask Amy or Harris for extra help if it came down to it, but I didn't want to burden them any more than I already had. The nurse suddenly brightened.
Oh, I almost forgot. A new nurse just joined our hospital recently. She used to work at a dementia specialist hospital in New York. She might be able to help you out. Look, that's her over there.
I looked in the direction she pointed, and to my surprise, standing there was Lauren, my best friend from our school days. Lauren noticed me too, and we both gasped in surprise before embracing each other, overjoyed at our reunion. Lauren, who had been a star on our school softball team, still had that same short, sleek hairstyle that suited her so well. She was as sharp and composed as ever.
Nancy, you haven't changed a bit.
She said with a smile. Neither have you, Lauren. It's so great to see you. Lauren told me that after her kids became adults, she divorced her husband and moved back to our hometown. We were excitedly making plans to catch up over tea when Jason, who had just finished his examination, was wheeled out of the consultation room. Oh, this is my husband, Jason. I guess the last time you saw him was at our wedding?
Yes, it's been a long time.
Lauren said, addressing Jason.
I've been friends with Nancy since middle school.
She knelt down to meet Jason's eye level in the wheelchair, but suddenly paused mid-sentence. Lauren? I asked, noticing her hesitation.
Oh, sorry.
Lauren replied, snapping out of it.
Jason, we met once at your wedding.
Is that so? I look forward to your help. Thank you in advance.
Jason said with a cheerful smile, bowing his head. Lauren watched him with a somewhat curious expression that I couldn't quite place. Realizing I was puzzled, she quickly stood up and smiled at me.
I've taken care of many patients like your husband, so I might be able to offer some advice. I'm sure I can help in various ways, so don't hesitate to reach out.
She said. Thank you, Lauren. I'll definitely take you up on that. I replied. We waved goodbye, and after that, I ended up seeing Lauren quite a bit, whether it was to pick up Jason's medication or when he wasn't feeling well. Each time, she looked at me with a concerned expression, but I pretended not to notice and just let it pass. A few months after reuniting with Lauren, I was at the hospital with Jason for one of his checkups. After Jason was called in for his examination and went into the room alone, I heard someone call my name.
Nancy.
It was Lauren, her expression slightly more serious than usual. Lauren? Is something wrong? I asked.
Jason just went in for his test, right? Do you have a few minutes?
She asked. Sure, I have some time. I replied, a bit puzzled. Lauren led me to a counseling room.
Nancy, how is it going with taking care of Jason?
She asked. You're worried about me? Thanks for that. I said, giving her an update on Jason's condition and how the constant care was starting to take a toll on me. Lauren listened intently, and I assumed she was concerned about my well-being. But then she began.
Actually, Nancy.
What she said next left me in disbelief. Lauren started by explaining that about a week before we reunited, she had seen my sister Amy walking through town with a man. While she knew Amy's face well, the man seemed vaguely familiar to her.
I called out to Amy, and she introduced the man as her boyfriend.
Lauren continued.
When we met at the hospital that day, I suddenly realized that the man I saw was your husband, Jason. I was so shocked. I didn't know what to think.
She said. That explains the strange look on your face at the time, but... I trailed off, trying to process this. Lauren had seen Amy and Jason together a week before our reunion, yet Jason hadn't seemed to recognize her at all during our meeting. Lauren explained.
Back then, I still had longer hair, down to my shoulders, and I was wearing glasses. I looked quite different from how I do now.
That might explain why Jason didn't recognize her, but still.
There's something else that's been bothering me.
Lauren added. She mentioned that Jason's behavior at the hospital struck her as oddly unnatural for someone with dementia. She had encountered people faking dementia in her previous job at a specialist hospital, and Jason's behavior resembled that of those pretending.
The man I saw walking with Amy in town was striding confidently, speaking clearly, and seemed perfectly healthy.
Lauren said. Could it be a case of mistaken identity or a mix-up? I asked.
I don't think so.
Lauren replied.
Jason has a distinctive tear-shaped mole under his right eye, doesn't he? The man with Amy had the same mole. I'm sorry if this sounds inappropriate, but he had a certain charm about him that was hard to miss, even for a man.
Realizing how her comment might have come across, Lauren quickly apologized, but she was right. Jason did have that mole under his eye. It's not the kind of feature you'd easily find on someone else. The face, the mole's position, it was too much of a coincidence. Could it really be true that Jason has been pretending to have dementia for the past 10 years and, on top of that, has been having an affair with Amy? It was hard to believe, but Lauren had never been the type to lie.
Nancy, I have to be honest. I don't think this hospital is very good.
Lauren said seriously. What do you mean? I asked, surprised.
The doctors here aren't particularly skilled, and despite the bad reputation, the patient numbers are oddly high. Don't you think that's strange? I think you should make sure Jason really has dementia.
Her words lingered in my mind, so I decided to take action. I bought a home security camera from an electronics store and discreetly placed it in our living room and bedroom. I set it up to record while I was at work and made it so I could check the footage from my phone during breaks. When I reviewed the footage, I was stunned. Jason's behavior was completely different from how he acted around me. He didn't seem to have any trouble finding things, and he went about his day normally. Even when Harris, the caregiver, came over, there was no sign that she was actually helping him with anything. What's more, the footage revealed that Amy frequently visited our home when I wasn't there. Their conversations were all captured on tape.
Nancy hasn't figured out that you're faking dementia, right?
Amy asked in one of the recordings.
No, I'm following your instructions. I pretend not to know the date or where things are, and it's working perfectly.
Jason replied.
I think it's also good to act like you can't write or to try going outside at night, pretending it's daytime. Nancy is so trusting that she'll never catch on.
Amy added.
What about Harris? Are you sure she won't spill the beans?
Jason asked.
She's fine. She's a divorced single mother who needs the money, so I've been paying her a little extra to keep her quiet.
Amy assured him. After laughing together, they headed to the bedroom, cuddling as they went. I was left speechless after watching the footage. The sister and husband I trusted had been conspiring behind my back all this time. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there. Feeling lost, I didn't know what to do with this devastating revelation. A few days later, I decided to confront Harris, the caregiver. I reached out to her, and she agreed to meet with me on Saturday. When I visited her apartment, I showed her the footage. Seeing the video, she looked defeated and began to cry, apologizing profusely.
What's on this video? It's all true. I'm so sorry for deceiving you all this time.
Harris confessed through her tears. She explained that she didn't have the qualifications for her job and had been struggling to find work. Amy offered her a job with exceptionally good pay, and Harris felt she had no choice but to go along with Amy's plan. Just as Amy mentioned in the video, Harris was a single mother in need of money. However, the guilt of being complicit in deceiving someone weighed heavily on her conscience. It was this guilt that ultimately led her to provide her testimony. She also gave me receipts, copies of her work logs, and her diary entries from that time.
I needed the money, but that doesn't excuse what I did. I betrayed you as a person, and I'm truly, deeply sorry.
Harris said, bowing her head repeatedly in apology. With the evidence and testimony Harris provided, I decided to gather more proof on my own. After speaking with a few relevant people, I consulted with a lawyer and planned to confront Jason and Amy in the act. On a typical weekday, I pretended to leave for work as usual, but instead, I waited near our home. Once Amy arrived and I was certain they were in the middle of their rendezvous, I barged into the house. They were caught red-handed, with no chance to escape. As they scrambled to cover themselves, I coldly stated, "I know everything. Jason, I heard you messed up at work and got sidelined to a dead-end position. You were so fed up with the job that you didn't want to bother anymore, didn't you?" I said, repeating what one of his colleagues had told me. Jason, looking panicked, began to confess.
It wasn't my idea. Amy came up with the plan. She said I should pretend to have dementia so Nancy would take care of me. We could meet whenever she was at work. It was all Amy's idea. Harris was just there to create an alibi. Amy hired her.
Jason's tone, as if he was trying to pin all the blame on Amy, made her snap. She started shouting hysterically.
You've got some nerve! You were totally on board with the plan. Now you're trying to wriggle out of it by putting all the blame on me? You're a coward!
Amy screamed.
Shut up! You were the one who wouldn't leave me alone. I just did what you said.
Jason shot back. As they stood there, stark naked, hurling insults at each other, I felt my heart grow colder. I couldn't stand to be around them any longer. That's enough. Both of you, get out. Now. I yelled. I dragged them to the living room window and threw them outside. I also tossed out their clothes and Amy's bag, then slammed the window shut. They pounded on the glass, pleading with me.
Let me in!
Jason yelled.
Please, listen to me.
Amy begged. But I ignored them, pulling the curtains closed. When they still didn't stop pounding on the glass, I sent them a message on WhatsApp. Shut up. If you don't want me to call the police, disappear. Suddenly, everything went quiet. Over the next few days, Jason and Amy kept coming to the house and bombarding me with WhatsApp messages. Fed up with their persistence, I decided to put the house on the market and move into a short-term rental. I had already transferred the house, which was originally in both of our names, into my name alone when Jason was diagnosed with dementia. Since Jason had retired, he no longer had the means to pay the mortgage, and I figured it would be a hassle if a dementia patient had any decision-making power in the event of a crisis. So I made the change preemptively. The house sold for more than I had expected, and combined with the savings I had secretly accumulated, I was able to purchase a condo. I didn't foresee this kind of situation when I made those decisions, but looking back, I have to say, good job, me. I divorced Jason and, while I was at it, demanded a hefty amount of alimony from both him and Amy. Whether or not Jason had the ability to pay was irrelevant. It was my way of saying, this is what you both did to me. I will never forgive or forget. Now, let me share some updates I heard through the grapevine. After our divorce, Jason remarried Amy, and they now live in her house. But apparently, things aren't going well between them. I imagine they were only driven by the thrill of their illicit affair. Marriage is different. It's not just about being lovers. When you live together, the good and the bad start to surface. You have to accept, acknowledge, and sometimes turn a blind eye to those things. But for those two, who got caught up in the excitement of their affair and then hastily remarried, that's probably too much to handle. Even if they wanted to separate, they have nowhere to go. Both of their parents have passed away, and the house Jason and I lived in is long sold. Jason has no place to return to now. With no other family to rely on and no escape, they're stuck with each other. Honestly, I couldn't care less, but if I had to say it, serves them right. As for Harris, her testimony led to Amy's facility losing its certification and eventually being shut down. It seems the business hadn't been profitable enough to repay the bank loan she took out to start it. So, in addition to the alimony she owes me, Amy is now deep in debt. That's a fitting price to pay for stealing her sister's husband. The quack doctor who gave Jason the fake diagnosis also faced consequences. After the scandal broke, most of the staff, except for Lauren, quit, and the hospital eventually went out of business. It turns out that the doctor had been taking on requests from some shady sources, issuing fake diagnoses like the one Jason received, in exchange for patient referrals. That's how this doctor, despite lacking any real skill and having a terrible reputation, managed to attract so many patients. After uncovering the truth, I realized how ridiculous the whole situation was. But I also had to acknowledge my own fault for blindly trusting what my sister and that quack doctor had told me. According to Lauren, I'm too trusting and tend to believe whatever people say. I don't like being suspicious of others, but I've learned that I need to be more discerning and think things through more carefully from now on. That's been my ongoing reflection lately. Speaking of Lauren, she recently landed a new job at a large general hospital in the neighboring town. They recognized her experience working in a New York hospital, and she's already earned the trust of her colleagues, allowing her to work freely and comfortably. Through Lauren's recommendation, Harris also started working in the hospital's cafeteria.
Wow, how cute!
Lauren exclaimed, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the puppy playing with a ball in front of her. This little guy is a male miniature dachshund I welcomed into my home about a month ago. He's become my precious partner, bringing me comfort and easing the fatigue after long days at work. Ever since he arrived, Lauren has been visiting my condo more often.
This little one is so adorable. I just can't help coming by to see him.
She says, but I know she's really coming to check on me. She'd never admit it, though. I may have lost my husband, but now I'm spending enjoyable moments with my best friend. And you know what? I think I could get used to this life, enjoying my singlehood with my close girlfriend by my side. So, how did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video.